something should only be studied so far as it is practically useful to us. That shouldn't even be a controversial take, but among like the philosophers and the pure mathematicians, it somehow is. Some of my previous videos have that assumption essentially baked into the reasoning, and don't worry, I am crucially aware of that. And I usually analyze this through the lens of something like mathematics, but actually it's more general and more broad than just mathematics itself. The argument I always hear, for example, is that, oh, why are we defining what we should do and what we should study in something like academia, for example, by what's immediately useful to us? Like, why can't we just study the intrinsic beauty of something like mathematics or philosophy for the sake of it, for the sake of like uncovering the truth about the universe? And this sounds really nice, but the problem with thinking that there is some kind of virtue in doing this is that you have to take a huge position, like a huge stance on a very big debate, and you don't even realize it. You have to, first of all, assume that there is some kind of objective truth to the universe that's like out there to be discovered. But that's not obviously and immediately true. It comes back to this whole kind of like thing I'm sure you've heard before, like, is mathematics discovered or created? That's like a big debate you see online, and you probably didn't even understand what it means, because nobody that says this actually understands what it means. They kind of just say this to sound smart, like, oh, is mathematics created or discovered? But it means exactly this, right? It's basically saying, is there some objective like truth to the universe that we are just discovering by doing mathematics? Or, as humans, are we so good at seeing structures in things that we are able to model a system mathematically and make that and generalize it and then predict the outcomes of another system by having such a good model of the first one? That's essentially the debate summarized in a nutshell, and it's really not clear. I'm not claiming to have solved it. I don't know the answer, but we don't need to solve it. That's my point. Because once we understand the clear and inherent ambiguity there in that debate, like, if we just don't take a position, we can instead do this analysis by looking at, okay, what are the options that we have in front of us, and what would I rather prefer? It's a subjective judgment call, yes, but that's the most you can do practically, right? Like, what path am I actually going to take based on the fact that I don't know the answer to something? Either way, you don't know if truth is objective or subjective. You can either, option one, is that you go into like academia, and for 50 years you essentially slave away and you're like writing papers and you're studying pure mathematics for the intrinsic beauty of discovering the nature of the universe, etc., etc. You make jack shit when it comes to money, and when you're like 80 years old, guess what? You still don't know whether any of the work that you did was objective or subjective. But there is one thing that you can say for certain, and that is that none of my work will ever be or has ever been useful to anyone in the general population. Option two is that you start with the assumption that you're not going to like discover some kind of objective truth about the universe. You're just going to make models of things that are practically useful to someone somewhere at some point. What happens if you run with this scenario, option two, right? You probably make more money. You're probably less of like a overthinker, loser philosopher. And you know what the really ironic thing is? If your model is actually good enough to be used in a real system and is practical, then you may accidentally just discover some kind of greater truth about the universe anyway. And then all the overthinking, philosophical, pure mathematicians will come in afterwards to analyze your theory and make it more rigorous. Like, mathematics is a lens I use to talk about this because it's such a clear and obvious example. Like, people think that pure mathematics is like the name of it even is misleading, right? You're saying pure mathematics is like the purest form of the subject and everything else stems from that. But that's not true. The way that mathematics is actually done is that you start with applied mathematics, and pure mathematics comes from that. It seems counterintuitive, mainly because of the deceptive naming system, but actually something like physics or applied mathematics, like in computer science, for example, lots of mathematics, in fact, most of mathematics, historically anyway, comes from outside of pure mathematics in academia, for example. Sure, there will be the odd example of pure mathematics being used in a real system, but those are few and far between. Just because it happens doesn't mean that it's a general thing that we can see especially when we compare it going the other way around. When we compare a physicist just doing physics, looking at a real system, and then discovering, oh look, I've developed this whole new branch of mathematics by accident. Here you go, loser pure mathematicians. Analyze my work, but I've already done the massive paradigm shifting discovery, even though I may not have been as rigorous as you were telling me to be. And the reason that this is the case is because there's an inherent contradiction with trying to uncover truth about the universe by not talking about the universe. Like, and I'm not talking about the universe in a grand scale. I'm talking about literally the microphone I'm holding, like everything around you, right? How are you supposed to discover the intrinsic beauty of mathematics in a universal scale if you're no longer looking at things in the actual universe? Like how does that even compute? How does that make sense logically? The reason that something like a physicist can develop a whole new branch of mathematics is because a physicist is looking at a real system that exists, and therefore if any kind of truth, objective truth about the universe exists within that system, because remember, we don't know if it exists, but if it does, it's gonna be in the system. Like we learn about it by analyzing that system, not by like abstractly thinking and just wondering and scratching our heads. Another reason is that reality is so much messier than something as basic as pure mathematics in its simplest sense allows for. So there are entire branches of mathematics that would never have been developed if we essentially stuck with the pure mathematicians level of rigor of doing something. Like things like statistics and probability theory are like foundationally reliant on not knowing and how we model ambiguity, essentially. I promise I'm not being provocative for the sake of it, but people who think this way, people who kind of want to study something for the intrinsic beauty of it, are usually deflecting fear. Look, there's a reason that this group of people usually have the look. You know what look I'm talking about, right? The kind of skinny neck, don't want to step on anyone's toes, overthinker, introvert kind of archetype. Like, I'm telling you, it's not a coincidence. If we look at this psychologically, it's basically just someone who's internalized, I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. I don't want to have to do something that's genuinely difficult, because when you're analyzing real systems, it is genuinely far more difficult. Like anyone, like talk is cheap, right? We all know this in like the general greater context of, I don't know, life, I guess. Like talk is cheap. Anyone can say anything about anything. Perhaps you think that's what I'm doing right now. But like in academia, a pure mathematician, for example, can write a whole paper that's in great mathematical detail and like it's very clean, etc., etc., but like nothing actually comes from it. And real systems are difficult in the sense that you have to actually prove anything you're talking about. An investment banker, if you're telling your higher ups in a bank about all these nice theories that you have, nobody gives a fuck. Right? The only metric they care about is this money going up or down? If you're a football manager and you're trying to explain all these, you know, complicated tactics to the owners, they don't care. They want to see, are you winning games or not? And that's not shallow either. It's a clear and concrete metric of whether you actually understand a system or whether you can just write a detailed paper about a system. Those are two very different things. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, by the way. Let's get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. Make sure to like the video if you liked the video. If you want to learn more about how we take these ideas from something that's genuinely powerful like mathematics or philosophy or nutrition or psychology, and you want to learn how to apply it into real day-to-day life and any system, first link in the description is a newsletter to a full course I am developing for specifically that purpose. Anyone that uses that link from that newsletter will get 50% off the full thing on launch, although I must say that spaces for that are almost filled and the course will launch within a couple of days of the upload of this video. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a nice day.